Sierra Quitiquit is a professional free skier and environmental champion. Sierra has starred in several award-winning ski films and skied on every continent except for Antarctica, which is just so impressive.
Yes, I don't even know if they have skiing in Antarctica, but that's pretty good. She's also the co-founder of the environmental organization Plastic Free Fridays, the founder and CEO of Time for Better, a creative climate communications agency.
Now, Sierra is proud to champion several non-governmental organizations, including NATO, Protect Our Winters, and the Fossil Fuel Proliferation Treaty. Please welcome Sierra Quitiquit to the stage.
Hi, how are you tonight? Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Utah. Let's see, here we go. My name is Sierra Quitiquit. I got a very generous introduction. I identify as a climate activist and a ski bum turned professional athlete. Here you can see some of what I do for a living, which involves hucking myself off cliffs and showing up and trying to get people to care about climate change. Tonight I'm going to be speaking to you about my journey from ego to eco. Growing up here in Park City, Utah, my entire life has always been about winning. This is young Sierra being cheered on by her father's ski coach as a ski racer, where I learned about the importance early on about winning. This has been deeply embedded in me from my grandfather, who passed the gift of skiing to my father and me. My grandfather is a Filipino immigrant. Yes, I am the whitest, blondest Filipino girl you've ever seen. My grandfather came to this country and he served our country and was stationed in Alaska, where he was taught how to backcountry ski, and fell in love with the sport and went on to become a ski champion in the Masters League, passed it on to my father and me, and hence began my love and passion for skiing. Ooh, wrong way. Home has been Park City, Utah for me. I had the pleasure of growing up in a little slope-side condo with myself and my three brothers, whom I shared a loft with 2 bunk beds smashed against the wall. And let me tell you, sharing a room with 3 boys for your entire childhood, you learn to find home outside. I was driven from the smell of my brothers into nature, and I spent every waking moment I could on the mountain in the sport of skiing. My passion for skiing continued, and I went on to compete on the World Free Skiing Tour and eventually found my way into the Warren Miller films. Anybody here familiar with Warren Miller films? Okay, great. We've got some skiers in the room. They're the cult classic Disney ski films, and I was lucky enough to be attending one here in downtown Salt Lake when the CEO of Spider Sports came along, grabbed the skateboard I had gotten my way down there out of my hand, took off with it, and came back 5 minutes later with it broken in half. Handed me his business card and said, "I'll replace it." And that's how I landed my first endorsement deal, and was shortly thereafter invited to Iceland to ski alongside one of my personal heroes, Julia Mancuso, who's an Olympic gold medalist and ski champion. My ski career led me to places like Alaska, Iceland, covering many magazines, several Warren Miller films, other award-winning ski films, and I was living my childhood dream. Skiing had always been my life. Spending time outside in the snow was the most important thing to me, and I was truly living my dream. However, over the last 10, 15 years of being a professional athlete, there was a little bit of a Instagram versus reality moment here. And I was being trained to do big, scary things constantly. Let's see if we can get this video to play. Oh, no. Is that gonna play for us? Anyways, so this is a little bit of what I was doing for a living at the time. I was creating media for sponsors, and I was standing on top of big lines, like the one on the left here in Alaska, which is one of my favorite lines that I've ever had the chance to ski. I managed to talk my guide into dropping me off on top of the spine on the right, and got to find my way down it and accomplish a first descent. In skiing, that's a bit of the holy grail. No one had ever skied that line before me, and I got to name it Scared Shitless, because that's what I was. Also the photo here, jumping off a cliff in the backcountry of the mountains here in Alta. And on top of every single one of these lines, I experienced the same thing. I'm scared, I want to call my mom, and I want to go home. And this is where I began my training of doing big, scary things. However, there was a little bit of an Instagram versus reality moment in everything that I was experiencing. As I was out there showing people the dream of this perpetual snowpack and this endless winter, the reality was that the average snowpack in the West has declined by 40% since the 1980s. And this has led to $1 billion loss in revenue. And by 2090, the scientists are saying that my hometown could have 0 snowpack. To me, this was unacceptable. And this wasn't just some big scary thing that people were saying. This is what I was experiencing. And this is what everyone in my community that was spending the type of time and dedication in the outdoors was also experiencing. We were living so intimately with the rhythms of nature that we were seeing it. As I would travel and fly to Alaska or Japan or Switzerland or all these beautiful places that had experienced a certain rhythm or cadence of nature, the elders in these places were saying something is seriously wrong, and something has been wrong for the last decade. So, in my ego state, I did what a lot of young people did, and I turned my back on the sport that could not economically support me, and I got another job, and I developed my alter ego, Svetlana. She went to New York, and she became a fashion model. And I took the leap into modeling. I landed on a reality television show called America's Next Top Model, and I began to work in an industry that I felt could support and sustain me. However, the reality of that world set in right at this moment, where I was shooting for one of the most famous fashion magazines in the desert, and I was living my dream. I was wearing Prada, $15,000 worth of camel fur in the 115-degree desert of Arizona, asking myself, how did I get here? And how will this industry possibly sustain itself in knowing that it is responsible for 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions? And this was my reality moment. There was no industry that I could run to that could sustain me and the world. And this wasn't just my problem. This was the entire world's problem and the youth's problem. And I was really angry about this. I had been sold this dream by my mentors and my peers that I could be a big famous skier or a famous fashion model. But the world around me was crumbling, and I could not be in denial of what I was seeing, what I was experiencing, and what science was telling us. And so I was angry. I was mad at the generations before me. I was mad at the polluters, and I was just simply angry knowing that the future in front of me was laid out to be this way. And so this was my moment to turn anger into action and to step up to the plate and ask myself not what I could get from the world, but what I could give to the world. And I know every one of us in this room have had this extremely angry moment with where the world is headed, where our leadership has taken us. Those generations before us that have taken and extracted so much and left us with so little in such a dim future. But I was still determined to do something. But the problem was that I'd lived a selfish life. I had been living under a ski rock, getting up at the wee hours of the morning to climb mountains, coming back in the dark. I had no money. I was a dumb jock and a high school dropout. So who was I to make a difference in the largest problem that humanity has ever faced? So I asked myself, what tools do I have? I'm not a scientist, and I'm about 4 degrees away from a PhD, so I'm never going to become a scientist. I'm not an attorney. I'm a reality TV star, so I could become a politician. But that's probably not the best track for me. But what do I have? Well, first of all, I'm pretty talented at doing big, scary things. So let's start with that. I think everybody in this room that's involved in the climate movement has that in common, right? We can all do big, scary things. I'm also a woman in media. So I'm used to having my picture taken. I'm used to talking about things. So maybe that's it. Maybe I'll start talking about climate change. And that's where I landed, and I took my first big, scary step. I am the founder of myspace.com/skiers against global warming. This is my first big, scary step into climate communication, and there's a lot of things about that will date me. But back in the day, who here remembers MySpace? All right, we've got a couple. So this was my first foray into climate communication, and let me tell you, back in the MySpace days, there was not a lot of people talking about climate change. And so that conversation was very much oriented around, is it real? Is it not real? And the reason that this was so scary is because the conversation was so polarizing that I was receiving death threats for suggesting that this could be human-caused and this could be a real problem that humanity would actually face. And as a young woman without a college degree, as a dumb jock, a woman in the media, this was a scary moment to be putting my neck on the line, to be doing climate work. But I decided that this was what I wanted to do with my life, and I continued to pursue. As I worked into this space further, I started to ask myself, what is my big lever? How can I make an impact in this movement? And I'm sure that this is a question that so many of you ask yourselves. I see a lot of really young people in this room, which has me so excited. First of all, thank you for being here. Thank you for lending yourself, your voice, and your time to this movement, because we need you. And I'm sure you ask yourself many times, how will you make a difference? How will we solve the largest issue that humanity has ever faced? And so I personally had a lot of lists of the things that I was not talented at. I didn't come from a family with big money. I didn't come from an educational background. I didn't have a lot of leverage. I didn't know a lot of people. But I knew that I could do difficult things and I could continue to persevere in this movement. And this was really my big moment of understanding that it's about community and it's about eco. And as I continued to move into this movement, my mindset really started to shift from honestly wanting the most in this world. For those of us in this room that didn't grow up with a lot, that grew up with immigrant grandparents, or grew up sharing a bedroom with 3 brothers, or grew up wanting, which is something that we can all relate to. There's human nature in wanting for yourself, for your family, for your community. But we need to collectively redefine what family and what community means. And I will say that I can look back at my career and those moments of jumping out of the helicopter onto scared shitless lines and onto these incredible experiences have been so beautiful and amazing. But the true richness of my life has come from being in spaces like this, sitting around tables like this, where I got to look people in the eyes and I said, I care about something bigger than myself, and I see that you care about something bigger than yourself, and we're in this together. And the bond and the community that this movement creates is so special. That's something that we don't find in most of the world. I was lucky to find it in the climate movement. So as I've moved through life, I'm still defined as a young person. I'm 34 years old today, and I've lived a lot of lives. I found that my values have shifted. At once, I could maybe say that I was a vacuum trying to pull in the most for myself. And that's an empty, cold, sad place to be. I've been on a journey that's redefined what's important to me, and that's compassion. This journey of becoming an activist and leading into the movement, leading into something that's bigger than myself, has allowed me to become a more kind, a more loving, more caring person. Service is something that I am constantly oriented toward each and every day. And it's not always selfless. Giving to others is a gift to yourself. And dedication. This is a movement that attracts tough people, because if you're someone that can't go the distance, you won't last in your dedication to this movement. We need people that care and care for the long run. This movement has taught me that value. The climate movement has also redefined to me what community means. Growing up, I loved my friends. I loved my family. I wanted for myself, I wanted for them, I wanted for others. Just last year, I had the opportunity to create an event alongside the American Conservation Coalition in Egypt at the United Nations COP27 called Building Bridges. And the team at ACC called me and they said, we want to do a crazy thing. We want to bring together liberals, conservatives, global north, global south, build these bridges, and redefine what it means to act on climate from a global perspective. Sitting and listening to leadership from the global south talking about their needs from the climate perspective, next to global north leaders that have already exploited so much from this world, give to those underdeveloped communities, was something so beautiful that I will never forget, and has allowed me to create brother and sisterhood for myself, for my community, my extended family around the world, because we are all in this together. And I think COVID really taught us that. If our brothers and our sisters are sick, then we are sick. But beyond that, if communities across the globe are lacking, don't have enough, that affects us. The last thing that I will say that this movement has taught me is perseverance. This is not an issue that we will solve quickly. And this issue feels so urgent. Does anybody here suffer from climate anxiety? I'm constantly kept up at night. I'm constantly worried about where we are headed. Will we solve this issue in time? But what I've learned over time is that we need to find a place within ourselves to be able to go the distance. These are lessons that I was taught as an athlete, and these are lessons that I continue to teach and reteach myself. And in order to have perseverance within this movement, we need to not only care for each other, but have deep care for ourselves. This is hard work that you are all doing. This is thankless, tireless work, and I know it. And I know that you know it. No one's giving out awards and accolades for all of your leadership in climate. And so what we need is for you all to persevere in this movement and stay the course and continue to wake up week after week, month after month, year after year, and say, I have the energy to sustain myself within this movement. Because what I've come to learn is that our work can only be as well as we are well. So take care of yourself, take care of each other, and continue to persevere. This journey for me, from ego to eco, has been so rich and fruitful. It has allowed a ski bum girl from Park City, Utah, to step into a place of leadership, of shared community, of communication. Here you see some of the organizations that I've been able to support. I'm the United States Youth Ambassador to NATO. I've founded a climate communications agency rooted in hope and optimism called Time for Better. I've started an organization called Plastic Free Fridays, which enables the everyday citizen to take that first step into activism through refusal of single-use plastic. We've started the Better Earth Fund to amplify creative climate communications globally. I get to work with organizations like the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty and Amazon's The Climate Pledge. We get to support leaders from the Amazon Watch and the Yawanawa tribe that are land defenders, protecting the lungs of this world. As an athlete, one of the things that you fear the most is that time where you're no longer as strong as you used to be. After 3 shoulder surgeries, broken femur, neck injury, I was desperately hanging on to my ski career. And when I finally let it go and say, you know what, maybe I belong in this climate movement, that's when brands showed up at my doorstep to become the global sustainability ambassador for On Running and Breitling watches. But most of all, I take great pleasure in working with organizations like the ACC that are willing to enter the tough spaces and say, let's reach across the aisle and let's find commonality. And so who knew that myspace.com/skiers against global warming would one day turn into protect our winters? That's not true at all. However, I am an athlete ambassador for an amazingly run organization called Protect Our Winters, which was founded by a professional athlete. And to my joy, the leadership of these hippie ski bums is now partnering with organizations like ACC to bring forward co-sponsored bipartisan legislation. And this makes me so proud as an activist that we've come to this moment where we're working together across lines to push the agenda of climate action. I'll leave you guys with the final notion that I can promise this work won't be easy, but it will be worth it. Just like every mountain that I've climbed for a sunrise view, just like every beautiful thing that each of you have done, I know it's been hard, but it will be worth it. And if you look around this room, you can consider every person here with the common goal of creating a better world your ally. Thank you.